welcome everybody. I'm Lauren Nee, the New York State Coordinator for SADD, and I want to introduce you all to Marianne Angelillo today. Marianne is a published author, a photographer, and a mother of four who lives in Skaneateles, New York, hard to say and spell. She's part of our New York Governor's Traffic Safety Committee, and she's part of that Speakers Bureau. Marianne's here to talk to us today because on Father's Day in 2004, her world was turned upside down when her 17-year-old son, Matthew, was killed as a passenger in a high-speed, impaired driving car crash. She's been speaking publicly since then, sharing her family's journey in hopes of preventing other families from experiencing such tragedy. She's incredible at reaching our teens here in New York and sharing Matt's story, and I'm really excited for you all to meet her and hear a little bit about her life and her journey. So please join me in welcoming Marianne Angelillo.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. That was a warm introduction. So I was thinking about meeting all of you today. And first of all, I'm so excited to be working today because like all of you, I did an assembly 3 months ago for 1,000 students and left the assembly, went back to my hotel room and found out that we were shutting down the entire New York State school system. So it was incredibly disappointing. The virus has, I'm sure, taught us all a lot of things. One of my posts on Facebook was that it reminded me a little bit of going through the stages of grief. It was a little too close to home of what it's like to have life change on a dime. And the virus changed all of our lives on a dime. Just like 16 years ago, my life was changed on a dime. And the thing with the virus, first of all, it was just like utter shock, like what? And then it was disappointment and it was sadness, and I was missing my work. And Lauren and I had spent a lot of the year planning 25 assemblies between now and June, and they were all canceled. I'm also a jail minister, and that has been a very big part of my healing the last 5 years of my work life. And that was all shut down because you're not allowed into any jails. So I've been resorting to pen pal with my inmates. So, you know, we find out about the word resiliency and how to be resilient. And we're not always in control. And then the question is, do you just fall into a deep, dark sadness, or do you figure out, okay, how can I best make use of my time? How can I feel purposeful, despite the fact that everything that made me feel purposeful has been taken away from me? And, you know, we've also learned that life is so precious and so fragile. We, as a nation, take care of our weak. I cannot believe what this virus has taught us, that we have stood up for the weakest of people, the elderly, the sick, the compromised, and we shut down an entire nation because we care that much about one life. And I have been extremely impressed by our country and all the sacrifices we've all made because of life. And then it brings me to, well, you know, we lose 70,000 lives a year to overdoses. How come we didn't shut down life for all of them? We've lost people in car crashes. We've lost teenagers to just dumb decisions, young people. And I know we care about, now the proof is in the pudding. We care about our elderly. We care about our sick. We care about our compromised, our diabetics, anyone who has a pre-existing condition, that they don't get this virus. But this has proven to me we need to work harder for our youth, because our youth is our future. And that is why, you know, I'm preaching to the choir here. We all care so much about our students. So if you don't mind, I'll screen share. So Lauren, let's see how I can do this. Great. Let me just give you a little snapshot when we talk about disappointment and resiliency and life changing on a dime. My husband and I met in college, and we had this gang of 4 kids. And my husband's an outdoorsman, so he taught all of us the outdoors. And a typical day for the Angelillo family was those frogs and a bucket. And the youngest is my little daughter. We'd stand her at the bucket while we filled it with frogs. And that was my son, Matt, who we're going to talk about. He just loved nature, and he was not my easiest child. He was pretty busy, and he was always catching something, and including this sunset with his mom. And my kids loved this little camp that we used to, we spent a lot of time at. We own a camp in New York State. And a good day for us was, like I said, a box of donuts, a bucket, some nets, poles, and we'd head out for a day in nature. In 2003, we had a family vacation in La Jolla, California. And we had never all been on a plane together before, but we flew out to La Jolla. And it was my niece's wedding, and someone caught this great photo of my family at the wedding. And in this picture, like, our hearts were just so bursting with life. We were in this great stage where, you know, everybody was getting older and more mature, and everyone was studying hard and getting good grades and playing sports. And we all had so much to look forward to. My husband and I on the right, my son to the left of me is Mark. He was excited because he was playing college football and was conditioning all through California for his beginning of college football. And Matt in the white shirt was going to be a junior in high school, and Lindsay and Alex, they were involved in sports as well. Matt, who's in the middle in this picture, he just had a ton of friends. He was outgoing. He was funny. He had a wonderful, charismatic kind of personality of attracting kids far and wide and entertaining them with all kinds of sports. And he loved to snowboard, and he played all the high school sports. He played lacrosse, and someone got a hold of a razor and had just shaved his head here for this lacrosse picture. And he and Alex shared a bedroom for 15 years. Alex was 15 years old. In this picture, they had just received Latin awards where they were both scholars in Latin. Matt's prom, he had come to me right before the prom and said, "Mom, I want to get my braces off so I look good for the pictures," and took him to the orthodontist, and they took his pictures off, and that's his sweet girlfriend from junior year in high school. So things for the Angelillo family were in such a good place. We had no idea what would happen to us within a short month. My son went out. We had the junior prom. He's in the middle there with his silver vest all tucked in amongst all those friends. And then he also wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. So he flew out to Colorado Springs and attended a 1-week summer seminar for student leaders. And he had gotten in and he had good grades, and he said he wanted to maybe be a pilot in the Air Force. So things for our family were humming along. And I'm just going to take a break. One more slide, which is, I'll go back to ending screen share if I can. Let's see, how do I do this? Stop presenting. So our tragedy, which happened on a dime, life changed on a dime on one night. Matthew had gotten back from the Air Force Academy. I had picked him up at the airport, and he was all excited because that's where he wanted to go to college. And he got together with a lot of friends the next night, and they were all on the lake fishing together, and then they went to a bonfire in the woods. And my husband and I, it was a busy weekend in Skaneateles. It was Father's Day weekend, and it was graduation from Skaneateles High School weekend. It was busy for a lot of people. And we didn't hear from Matt until we got a phone call at midnight that some kids were on their way over to our house and was Matt home. And apparently they warned us that there had been a horrific crash in the middle of the village, and they just wanted to make sure Matt was home safe and sound. And that was the last time we heard from our son. He was a passenger in a two-seater Ferrari. We had a bit of a perfect storm. He was excited about sharing his experience at the Air Force Academy with all his friends. So he was on a little bit of a high, and all his friends were. They had spent the day together. They were fishing. They were just really innocently wanting to be together. But there was alcohol at the bonfire. And Matthew, who was pretty disciplined and never would ever do anything to jeopardize his driving, he left his car home that night because he decided he wanted to be a part of the party, perhaps, and he didn't want to be responsible. So at the party, under the influence, he fought for a seat as a passenger in a car with a drunk friend. And the only thing that had come to mind for me when I heard about the crash and that he was a passenger in a high-speed car crash, the first thing that I said is, what was he thinking? What was he thinking? And then the answer came to me, he wasn't thinking. When you drink, you don't think. When you drink and you're under the influence, all the rules and good character traits that you've pretty much depended on all your life are null and void and go out the window. In a million years, Matt would have been a very conservative driver, taking care of his friends, getting them all home safe, and never drinking and driving, never going over the speed limit. But yet, under the influence, he literally fought for a seat in a car with a drunk driver, thinking it would be the ride of his life. And he was killed on impact as the vehicle went over 100 miles an hour, came through our little village of Skinny Atlas, and hit an innocent couple out on a date, and they were in a minivan. And luckily their kids were home with babysitters, because if there were kids in that car, they might have all been killed, or the two children could have been killed. So it was a reckless decision. And it traumatized our entire community. It was extremely shocking to everyone. The whole group of friends that hung out together, they witnessed these kids driving off in this vehicle. They tried to take the keys away, or they tried to say, don't get in that car, but no one called a parent. No one stopped it. It just happened. They all stood there and allowed this drunk driver to take off in a Ferrari. There was a friend on my son's lap. He went through a windshield. He suffered a broken vertebrae, but he survived. I don't know how. The driver survived. I don't know how. It was just like Matt. It was just almost like, is this the way it was meant to be? That Matt was the one that lost his life? And does this mean that if he's chosen, then I'm chosen? And that is, that's pretty much the way I felt about it. I'm gonna go back to my screen. Okay, here, share. It's hard to believe that anyone survived this car crash. It was horrific. They saw the driver stumble at the party, and one friend had said to my son, don't get in that car. Steven's stumbling, he's drunk. And there was a lot of lives that changed. And we realized, again, we learned a couple things. Number one, for me, my life had to be different. It was like I put on glasses and everything looked differently to me, like fatal vision. Alcohol was different. The word drunk was different. I didn't enjoy Super Bowl commercials. I changed. And someone told me, well, you'll never be the same, but you can be a good new you. And I started speaking and sharing at high schools. And I realized that through one presentation, I can often get to the hearts of students. I have a video I present, which I won't show today, but I have a video that I made because I was a videographer, and I took every news clip off the news and intermixed it with Matt's life that I had videoed. And the video is pretty powerful. This is a high school, Downsville, out in New York State. And we also were a part of a huge exhibit called the Gone Forever exhibit. And a lot of the mothers who had lost children to drunk driving, we all donated photos and artifacts and T-shirts and lacrosse shirts, and it traveled to every high school in Onondaga County. It's been over 15 years, so it's been put to rest, and it's not. They said it had a lot of wear and tear. This is what we're left with. You know, I don't often visit, but at Christmas, my husband will put a beautiful ribbon on a centerpiece, and it will say, rest, sleep in heavenly peace. It's devastating what Matt has missed. His younger brother, in his memory and honor, went on to go to the United States Naval Academy, and he graduated first in his class at the Naval Academy, and put all his effort into his brother. And we learn to heal. I learned one thing, that time does not heal all wounds, but love does. Love does, and a lot of work, and a lot of patience, and a lot of resiliency, and a lot of prayer. My family took this vacation in Florida last year. We were supposed to be there this week, but we had to cancel it. And then Alex, who's now out of the Navy, he married his high school sweetheart, and they brought Charlotte home for the weekend. And we are enjoying this little munchkin. She's really cute. My husband has a lot of smiles on his face, and we went through a lot of hard years of not wanting to have family photos because the hole was just too big. Matt's life and missing out of all of our photos was just too painful. So we stopped taking some photos, and now Alex is here with Charlotte and his wife Andrea, and we are all smiling. My other son, Mark, my eldest son, he married 2 years ago, and they have a little girl, Matea. So we have found ourselves to be in a good place. So I'm gonna go back to my screen. So some of my notes. Everyone always said, like, they asked me to do these victim impact panels, and I'm like, I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be a victim anymore. So in the jail, we work on 12-step program. We work on change. How do you change oneself? And we use the 12 steps, and we use faith, and we use encouragement and hope. I told them, which is the name of my book, is called Sharing My Stones. And the concept is that when you have something in your life that's so heavy and so painful, you have two choices. You can hold on to those stones and they will weigh you down and they'll get into your heart and harden your heart. Or you can choose through compassion to share them with another person and give them the stones, and it makes them feel privileged that you've shared with them. It makes for great relationships. It makes for deep relationships. And then your load is lighter. So I was so passionate about this way of healing that I did write a book, and this is what it looks like. It's on Amazon. It helps. It's really interesting book because it's very easy to read. I use journals, like I journal a lot. So I don't know if you can see, but like I write all the time. That's my outlet, is just to write down how I feel. And when I wrote the book, it was so easy because it took me 10 years to write it. It was so easy to, once I had the journal, so I didn't have to feel the pain. I could just write it right off the journal entry. So Syracuse University uses it for health and wellness, and the students all have to write me an essay. So I have like over 500 essays from SU students. It's a really powerful book. I personally think college is like a perfect age to read it. And sometimes I'll meet students who heard me speak in high school and now they're reading my book in college, which is interesting. But it's sharing stones has been a big part of my healing, and it's worked in the jail setting by allowing people to feel, they feel loved, they feel like somebody's listening, and it releases a negative tension in them that they've been holding on to for years. So when they give a stone to me or tell me what's happened to them, just compassion heals, love heals, and caring for people. And I encourage the high school kids that sharing stones is so much better than resorting to self-medicating, which is the end result of a hardened heart. You will often self-medicate. One other mention about drunk driving. I have worked with a few inmates who have taken a life. And it's really a horrible thing to take a life. I mean, it's the young man who was the driver in my son's story. He went to prison for 2 years. He was on the front page of every newspaper, and his name was just, I mean, it was just so painful to watch what he had to go through. You wouldn't want anybody to go through that. I work with men. They have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they're off to prison for 10 years. They have to be taken away from their families. And often the case is they are an alcoholic. And that's where a lot of our work lies, is to educate on the dangers of drugs and alcohol. Because if they're an alcoholic, and I know alcoholics today, they will drink and drive. They don't have the capability of having wisdom to say, this is dangerous, I'm not doing this, you know. So my end thing is that our highways are only as safe as our drivers are healthy. We need healthy drivers. So I guess I'll stop talking for now. Did I miss anything?
No, it just comes out so differently when we're virtual versus when we're in person, and getting Matt's full story is just a phenomenal experience that I can't explain. You have to see Marianne in person. So Marianne, do you want to plug your website or anything else so folks can get to know you and Matt a little bit more? Because I think that story is just, it's so much bigger than we're able to share in the short time that we have here.
I know. And there's so much to learn from this. I mean, there's the whole thing about moving away from being a victim to being chosen, you know, and every person I work with, like in the jail, That's what we try to work on, is moving them from being a victim to feeling like, okay, I've screwed up my life, but I can turn it around. And I'm even chosen to do that, you know, and encourage and give hope. So it all goes hand in hand, the sharing stones, so that people don't self-medicate. So I can be found anywhere. You Google my name, a lot comes up. I have a Facebook, Sharing My Stones. It's facebook.com/sharing my stones. I mostly post there, and that's the most current. My website, it has all information on it. And I try to keep up with it, but it's an older website that I did myself. So it's sharingmystones.com. And my email address is M, as in my first name, Marianne Angelillo @mac.com. So I try to be I try to be out there as much as I can. And I'm willing to travel if anybody wants me to come out. I'm flexible. I love my work. I'm not ready to give it up. I'm sad about our 25 assemblies. Anybody have any questions?
Not so much a question, but I will make a shameless plug from our SADD folks. And one of the reasons we wanted to chat with some advocates today is because of stories like Matt's. We have this idea that the teenagers that are involved in these crashes or that are involved in drunk driving in general are the bad kids, or they're the kids that we need to be careful of. And Matt's story is one of those examples that you could do everything right. You could designate a driver for the evening. You could be the top in your class. You could be in the Air Force Academy, but you can still find yourself in a situation with a drunk or impaired driver. It's really important for all of our teens across the nation to understand that the decisions we make affect the rest of our lives every day. So thank you. We appreciate you sharing your story over and over and sharing it with all of us. Matt's memory is kept alive this way.
Yeah, it does touch the students. It does, if you're going to speak to an audience, they have to feel it here, and it is shocking, that you compromise your wisdom, and I hit hard on wisdom because, and Lauren had said to me, well, what's your main? A lot of times people say, well, what's your main message? Is it don't drink and drive? No, it's not just don't drink and drive. It's not like, oh, make sure you always have a designated driver. No, you need to keep your wisdom because it's going to save you. It's going to save you. It's going to tell you you're getting too close to the edge. It's going to tell you that you're compromising something. Teenagers are going to take risks, but they're going to take risks a lot easier under the influence.
For sure. And that's something, go ahead.
No, and that includes in college with finding yourself in compromising situations. You have to have your wisdom. And I have a host of stories I could share because Matt isn't the only one. I help bereaved parents everywhere, and their stories are just as horrific. All of them.
Absolutely. And it's something each one of us as coordinators, I know there's a lot of our coordinators on the call today or other folks that are in the prevention field also see and deal with every day. And it's something that we're so passionate about stopping because we know it's preventable. We know it's something that we can make those wise decisions to avoid. So if anyone has any questions for Marianne, by all means.
Yep. I never mind talking.
I don't have a question, Marianne, but I just want to thank you so much for getting on here and sharing your story. And I know we talked about how this virtual way of life, of how we have to do things now, is still kind of hard and difficult, and definitely not something that we're all quite used to just yet. But I don't know that I would have heard this story or your story had we not done this. So I'm extremely thankful for this, because I know you do a lot of presentations in New York, but definitely a powerful story. And you can just tell your strength that you have, and through this adversity. You've been a trooper, and you've learned how to take it and make a message out of it. So thank you so much for all that you do, and for sharing with us today.
I appreciate that.
So to sort of wrap things up, I guess we can pull off of that, Dylan, and just say that Matt's story is everybody's story, and it could become anybody's story. And that's not something that we're after. That's something folks like Marianne, who go around and talk about their personal experiences, are trying to help avoid, or trying to help prevent, as are all of we at SADD. So that's why we're focusing on alcohol and impaired driving all week this week for our SADD Super Safe Summer. We will also be sharing the story of Amy Nichols later on today on our social media accounts, so tune in for that. And be sure to share this around with all of your friends, family, and whoever honestly could benefit from it, because there's nobody that this couldn't touch or couldn't affect. Also know that you can be an advocate. So it's really important as a teen to be able to stand up and know when to say something. We thank Marianne for being here, and thank you everybody else for joining us.
And you guys got my website, right? And
Sure do.
It's an easy thing to remember, sharing my stones. It's got a